One of the most challenging aspects of quitting smoking weed or quitting any substance is learning to live with our current reality no longer in a state of delusion. A lot of people, when they first quit smoking weed or quit drinking alcohol or whatever it may be, they tend to find that quitting is actually the easier part of the process. Going through the withdrawals is actually the easier part of the process. And that's really not what, in my opinion, sobriety and recovery is about. The goal of getting sober from a drug isn't to stop using a drug, because the drug is typically the surface to something much deeper. So sometimes people will quit smoking weed to discover that they're in a broken relationship or a broken marriage. Sometimes people will quit smoking weed to realize that they're at a dead-end career. Sometimes people will quit and they realize that their mental health, their financial health, or their physical health is completely in the gutter. And finding or realizing the reality and sometimes the weight of our current situations in life, especially after years of addiction, this is the real challenge in sobriety, in the recovery process. And this is often what throws people off and brings them back to drug use. A lot of people will think that it's a craving, or that it's a celebratory thing, or that it's a certain moment in time, peer pressure, that brings them back to using a drug, but it's often not. It's often rooted in these deeper challenges that we face when we can no longer change how we feel psychologically or how we feel physically in an instant when we're facing some of these uncomfortable scenarios, right? Because to quit using weed and realizing you're in a failing relationship, or that you're in a really, really poor physical health, or that you're in a financial situation that's really not good, that's hard. It's hard to have that realization. It's hard to then not use the drug because you've been so accustomed to coping with those things through drug use, or putting those things off through drug use. And in many cases, addiction is actually easier to deal with and easier to manage than dealing with those actual issues. And this is what I say is the hardest part of quitting smoking weed or quitting a substance. This is also the most important part of quitting, though, because the goal of quitting isn't just to be sober and not smoke weed, not smoke cigarettes, not vape, not drink alcohol. The goal is to inherently change the person that you are. And just by going through the sobriety process and recovery process, in most cases, that change often does occur. But we want to change who we are, because if we don't change, then we're going to go right back to the person that we were that got us into using drugs in the first place. And if we don't address those situations, whether it's addressing the broken marriage, the relationship, the financial problems that we're dealing with, the physical health problems, the self-care problems that maybe addiction has created or played a role in amplifying and making worse, if we don't address those scenarios, if we don't change those circumstances, then we're going to quit drugs, but we're going to find ourselves right back in the exact same environment that got us into drugs in the first place. Now, look, I'm not saying that those various aspects of life aren't salvageable. In a majority of cases, they are. And this is what the sobriety and recovery process is all about. When people say quitting drugs is hard, it's very, very infrequently is it because of the withdrawal symptoms. Very infrequently is it because of the social pressure or the peer pressure or the cravings, which, by the way, if cravings are a problem, we got our Kick It Crave Less chewing gum. Check this out. This can help. But it's very, very infrequently those things. It's the bigger picture stuff. It's the stuff that was underneath the addiction to weed or alcohol or nicotine or watching adult media content. It's the stuff that's underneath that's a lot more challenging. Now, when you first quit, I don't necessarily want you to dive into that more challenging stuff, right? You have one goal when you first quit a drug, and that's not to use the substance. That's not to consume the drug. Now, after a period of time of sobriety, 30 days, 90 days, 120 days, 3 months, 6 months after being sober, when we're no longer delusional, when we're in a place where we can think clearly, when we're not dealing with the constant cravings that we might be dealing with when we first quit, when you can make level-headed decisions, that's then when you start to take on these more challenging things. And that can be pretty hard. You know, when I first got sober, I woke up, I was 27 years old, I had a doctorate in chiropractic, I was living back at home, my financial situation was a complete mess, my physical health was a complete mess, my relationships were a complete disaster. I woke up, and I wasn't worse off, right? Like, I was actually objectively doing better than a lot of people that we work with. I did have my own business. I did have an education behind me. I did have a lot of positive things despite the negative. But when I first quit, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to change all of these things right now. And every time I tried to do that, it immediately brought me back to relapse. And when I eventually successfully quit, I realized that, okay, I have one objective right now. Don't smoke weed, don't consume nicotine, don't watch adult media content. And then once I got comfortable in my decision to see those actions through, once I became clear-headed as I got through the withdrawals, as I got away from the cravings, as I got away from the drug consumption, as I started to change the people that I hung out with, change my environment, change my mindset, only then was I ready to go deeper into the deeper things that needed to be dealt with. See, a lot of people will quit using drugs and they'll dive right into like super heavy therapy for a past history of trauma, or super heavy counseling for their marriage, or whatever it is. It's too much. It's too much at once. Quitting a drug is enough to overwhelm a person alone. If we pile on all that other stuff before we've confidently come up with a plan for quitting the substance and become comfortable sober, chances are you're going to wind up going backwards. You're going to get overwhelmed, you're going to go backwards, and you're just going to find yourself continually relapsing. Now, if this is something that you've struggled with, we do offer one-on-one coaching programs. We offer ongoing programs or one-off sessions. You can learn about that in the pinned comment or the video description. If cravings are something you're dealing with, if it's that brain fog, that irritability, that anxiety that a lot of people get after they quit, be sure to check out our Kick It Crave Less chewing gum supplement. We're the only supplement in the world to exist like this. It's a gum that contains KSM-66 ashwagandha and N-acetylcysteine. This is a product that I wish I would have had when I was quitting, and we've finally created it 2 years in the making. The whole process of creation, even the process of making it, has its own patent on it. So pretty cool through our manufacturer. All right, guys, I hope you have a great day. Follow me into the video description or the pinned comment to learn more, or just pop into the next video.